Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ, along with my great buddy, the producer, Tucker Lucas. We have a special episode of JJ Meets World for you today. Our guest is Blaine Cook. He is an author, and we get to talk about his book, The Nearby Resident, as well as Tucker brings me something that brings me great pleasure at the beginning of this. That's the tease. You're going to have to sit back and find out what that is. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
JJ, I want to start off today's episode right.
So what's in that bag?
I brought something for you and I to do together.
Is it mustard?
No, it's not.
Okay.
You will find this pleasurable.
Okay.
I believe. I will find it pleasurable.
Okay.
There's a convenience that those of our generation got to try a number of years ago, and eventually it's going to be gone. We won't be able to do it anymore, and it's very pleasurable.
Okay.
You and I are both going to, at the same time, open some Netflix envelopes that I have got. I got 3 Netflixes today.
Oh.
These are the actual red envelopes with the Blu-ray inside of them. I actually can't remember what came in the mail today. And I thought, what better feeling than opening one of these bad boys and looking at the disc that's come to you.
You know, it's funny you say that because one of my favorite things was opening up a new DVD, right? Like having to pull the plastic away. And then they had the tab at the top.
That really irritating one that if you don't tear it just right, it's going to flake off.
And that was one of my favorite sensations in my early 20s until I worked at a video store. And every week I'd have to open about 200 of those because even when you got the DVD from a distributor, it still came packaged like that because maybe you're selling it for retail.
Right.
Oh.
Well, we won't have these forever, right? So you go ahead. Once you hold it up to your microphone so everyone can hear the magic. And I can't remember what I even ordered, so you're going to have to tell us what treats I have in store for me to go home and watch.
Tucker will be watching Spider-Man 2.
Ooh, Spider-Man 2.
And on Blu-ray.
So I only have Spider-Man 3 on Blu-ray of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans.
You own that one?
Yeah.
The third one?
I got it for like $1 at something. I can't even remember.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
If it's a superhero movie, I want to put it in the collection on some level.
May I read the synopsis?
Why not?
Okay. Burned out from leading a double life, mild-mannered Peter Parker decides to shelve his superhero alter ego, Spider-Man. But will Peter suit up again when multi-tentacled villain Doc Ock begins terrorizing New York City? It is unrated.
Can you imagine if the answer to that question was no? Like he just never goes back?
Nope. All right, now you open yours.
All right. I think there's a TV series in one of these, but I'm not...
Gossip Girl, Season 2, Disc 1.
I could be so lucky.
This is great. This is bringing me great pleasure.
This is basically our version of ASMR. And I will also be watching Spider-Man. That's right.
Oh, the original Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's a Spider-Man marathon, I guess, with Tobey Maguire in store for me. This is the last one. JJ's open it now.
This one is also a Blu-ray. Ooh, this has seen better life, though.
Yeah, that one's in trouble.
Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Disc 3.
That's right. I forgot I've been going through the Star Treks. I hadn't sent in discs for a while.
This includes episodes such as the Carbomite Maneuver, the Menagerie Part 1, the Menagerie Part 2, and the Conscience of the King. Shatner is
Which is a
listed.
Hamlet reference.
Really?
That's a Hamlet reference, the conscience of the king.
Ooh.
That's where he says the play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. When he decides to use the dumb show play. You know, I just recently saw another Hamlet reference that I wish I had found when I was doing the show, which is a scene from The Addams Family, the movie with Raul Julia and
Angelica Houston. We talked a lot about the Addams Family on this show lately.
Yeah, it's been on my mind for some weird reason. It came up around Halloween and hasn't left yet.
I just like to snap.
There's a scene where Wednesday and Pugsley are sword fighting.
Yep.
And then Fester comes down to give them notes, and they're quoting a Shakespeare monologue. It's not something said during the fight. It's just a monologue of Shakespeare's, but they're both quoting it back to each other. And I'd never caught that before.
That's exciting. This is exciting.
Yeah.
Do you ever have the pleasure of when an Amazon box arrives and you're like, I don't know what's in this?
Right. I'll hopefully be doing that again pretty soon too. So thought we'd kick off this way.
Speaking of Amazon, our guest today, Blaine Cook, is an author who has self-published through Amazon. He's going to give us all the details there. A very interesting conversation with someone about writing his own book, being from a small town and wanting to continue that small town feel. We also talk about deer hunting, which came out of nowhere other than the fact that it's timely for us at the time of this recording.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
It won't be.
Blaine is a fan-suggested guest, isn't he?
Correct. Blaine was suggested by several JJ Meets World regular listeners. So we heard it. We got it. Stop giving me suggestions. Actually, no, we love suggestions. In fact, if you go to our JJ Meets World Facebook page, you can direct message us. If you have an idea for a guest, including yourself, don't worry. You got to be your own best publicist, right? We'll gladly take those suggestions because it's always fun. And the goal of this podcast is for me to meet every person on planet Earth. So keep those suggestions rolling and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World with our new friend, Blaine Cook.
JJ Meets World.
Hello, Blaine. Welcome to JJ Meets World.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Blaine, so let me tell you the road that got me to inviting you onto this show.
Yes.
So not only are you Brady's cousin, my sister's fiance, so soon we'll be sort of related, which will be awesome. But also, one of our number one fans told me, he's like, you got to talk to Blaine. He wrote this book.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I think you do. Shout out to Jeff.
Yep.
And so I said, well, yeah, we should absolutely reach out to Blaine to be on the show. So welcome to JJ Meets World.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is new for me. I've never done a podcast before, so I'm excited.
We're glad that we can be your first. You never forget your first, right? So let's talk about your book. First and foremost, you don't seem like a writer to me. Was that something that just popped out at you one day?
Yeah,
he's saying you don't seem like an alcoholic. Because to him, all writers are people with alcoholism who sit and they're tortured and they argue all the time.
Your fingers don't look like they've been tapping on a typewriter all day.
You have a sunny disposition.
Yeah, no, that's usually people's first impression when they find out that I've done a little bit of writing. I would have to say the writing goes back, since I was a young kid. In school, I wasn't, and I don't know how many people are, but wasn't a big fan of like the book reports. I mean, it seems, kind of just generic and, write a topic about this or that or the other thing. And really that didn't really appeal to me, but I did it, like as any good student maybe would, I don't know. And it wasn't until I got into high school and I had some more kind of involved classes with like, English lit and creative writing, which was the actual class that I took that kind of sparked my interest in writing, because it literally, the basis was, we're going to spend, a couple weeks, we're going to try and give, the teacher would give us an angle, and kind of, pick a topic, and then you just kind of ran with it. And that was the type of stuff that I really got into, just because you get to use your imagination. I mean, and obviously that's the best part about creating, and, whether you're a writer or musician, art, it doesn't matter. It's just being able to use your own maybe experiences and things to draw off of. And so that's kind of where I got my niche. Then I kind of went away from it. I've been at NDSU going to school, just graduated in 2017, my undergraduate, and then now I'm back in graduate school. And it wasn't until kind of the latter part of that that I thought, maybe I should look back into the writing. I'd been kind of thinking about it, going back and forth. And my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was actually, I give her a lot of credit, because she basically got tired of me talking about it. She's like, look, if you're going to do this, now would be the time to do it, because we don't have kids. We have a dog, and we're kind of just doing our own thing. And so our responsibilities are, I would say, low at this point. And she's like, just do it. And so I basically, just one evening, just pulled out my computer, kind of had an idea that was percolating for a while, and just from there kind of ran with it. And
so was this a story that you had thought about for a long time, and it just took sitting there and actually typing it out?
I think actually the characters I had for a while. I'm a big fan. Like if I go to a movie, I always root for kind of the underdog, or the people that it's not like that flashy character, but that character has like crazy abilities that they don't even realize. Like to me that's really cool. And so I kind of had the main character in my story, which is heavily kind of rounded from that, and then other supporting casts. And so I kind of had that for a while, and then I was just thinking, well, what kind of story could I create that embodies that type of vibe, I guess.
Have any of your friends or loved ones said like, I'm pretty sure I'm Reggie in this book? Like
there's definitely some, I have drawn from some of my close friends and family. I try not to get too similar, because I certainly want the characters in my story to have their own identity and their own feel, but certainly certain maybe traits and nuances that they do, are certainly from people that I know.
I wrote a play once that was strictly about a breakup I had with a girlfriend, where I didn't even bother changing the names of characters. And then I read it once on the radio, and it was embarrassing. Yeah. It was called In Search of Eredo, which is the Greek muse of writing.
What station?
On Rock 102.
When did they go, hey kid, you want to read this play that you read a play?
An
entire play.
Yeah, it took like 4 breaks to like get through it. Yeah, it was like a little 10-minute play. Yeah.
Entirely about a breakup.
Entirely about a breakup. And the play ends with me writing the play about the play. And so it's very meta.
Should you name it Sonata?
No, In Search of Eredo, because that's what I was searching for, my muse. And I don't know, maybe in my mind I was like, maybe if she hears this, she'll think we should get back together. That wasn't the case.
They didn't know.
No. So when you're writing anything, I mean, anytime I'm writing, even like the little summaries for these podcast episodes, I always have to go, okay, I'm going to write it once. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to let it be bad. And I'm going to go back and go, ooh, that's really bad.
Yeah,
I better change that and make it good. And I've heard a lot of writers in interviews say similar things to their process.
Yeah.
So can you kind of walk us through the messy parts of your process?
So I had no idea what I was doing. Like going into it completely blindfolded, and luckily in this day and age, Google and YouTube are very nice things to have. And so, I mean, the basis of it is kind of elementary. I mean, it's just like what your teachers would have told you growing up. Write everything out, create an outline. Create your kind of a rough chapter list and all this stuff. I really kind of skipped over that and I went right into the writing. And I found out pretty early on that I had to backtrack a little bit and just gather some of the thoughts, because a lot of it I didn't really write a ton of notes, which was, when I look back on it, was kind of surprising. If an idea or something kind of generated, then I went with it. And I would say the messy parts were, you had these kind of climactic points that you wanted to bring out in your story, and getting from point A to point B, that was kind of tough, because it's so easy to just, make your characters do these crazy things. Well, there has to be some sort of connective of like, well, why are they doing it? And so that's kind of where things got, I wouldn't say messy, but you definitely had to pay attention to the details, because especially in a story where there's a lot of this, I would say my story has quite a different variety of perspectives that are coming through. So to keep track of who's thinking what and doing this and that, there was definite days where I was like, okay, I need to write this down, because even as if you're writing, you may have your thought process, but sometimes it doesn't always show through, when you're actually putting words to paper.
The first person who reads this, when you consider it as like, I think I'm done.
Well, my wife, she was kind of a forced beta reader.
Yep.
Just because she was right there half the time. But
she's like, Blaine, no more chapters.
Yeah,
I'm done. No more chapters.
It was always right before bed too.
You started this. You told me to write.
Yeah, exactly. There was oftentimes, it was right before we're winding down or something. We're like, hey, would you mind reading these 15 pages that I have? And she was a sport about it. But I would say, I had some close friends read through it, people that I trust, and that's the thing too, is you want to have, I guess I've heard it from different angles. Some people are like, you got to have somebody that doesn't know you at all read it and tell you what you think of it. I kind of went down that road, which was great because I got good feedback. Then I also had a close-knit group of people that I felt, would give me the honest feedback, because I know who I am, behind the writing and everything. And so they can, I would say, maybe be a little bit more brutal in their assessment. So I can't point to one person in thinking about it, but yeah, there was definitely a group of people there.
I think criticism is one of the hardest things that for a person to accept, but at the same time, it's something that we crave.
Yeah.
Right? I assume you wrote this thing and you're like, I know that it probably needs work, but you tell me, because at this point, all of the letters are jumbling together.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. When you read your own words 1,000 times over and over, you begin to convince yourself that it's good enough, or, it'll work, or whatever. And that's not the case. You have to have fresh eyes on it. And, I appreciate criticism. I've always, regardless if it's writing or anything, I appreciate people that can tell you if your work isn't maybe as good as it could be, and I've always been kind of motivated behind, okay, I can do something better, I can improve this. And so the feedback actually, or the criticism, wasn't hard to listen to. I almost appreciated to hear it, because then I was like, okay, at least, I'm getting people to think about it. It's not bland or generic, I guess. So
when I'm writing something, I find that I take for granted the fact that I see everything in my head, like it's all there already, and I already intimately know what I'm writing about. But when somebody else reads it and they go, I don't understand this. This doesn't, like, this middle part here. Is she in love with him, or is she in love with a fire hydrant? Yeah, I don't. So you got some of that feedback where
there was a lot of that, yeah, and that's so this is a mystery-based novel, but it was actually supposed to be a romantic novel. It's supposed to have kind of a
smooching, huh?
Yeah, a little.
Nice. It's a hard left turn.
I'm not I'm not a guy that goes to like the very romantic chick flicky movies on my own. That's definitely with my wife or, like we're going to this. So I'm there.
All right, here we go, Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
No, you mean Dupree for you.
Yeah. Well, and so this was supposed to be, have this romantic angle, and it didn't at all. And so,
was that something that you were surprised by, like as it was unfolding, as it was sort of, as you were writing it, you realized, oh, this is becoming something else than what I had initially.
Yeah. And I didn't really realize until probably 3 or 4 chapters in, because I was writing these different situations that, like, and I write as if it's a movie. So in my mind, I see different scenes, and that's kind of how I put the words down. And so there was a lot of scenes, I guess you could say, where I'm like, this would be a great opportunity for something, kind of mysterious to happen, or that, there's something else going on here. And so, yeah, quickly romantic, just out the window. And I was like, part of me was like, should I scrap it? Should I stick to what and I said, no, just keep rolling with it. You've gotten this far, just see where it takes you. So yeah, there was a definite like, this isn't exactly what I thought it would be, but it's maybe even better than what I had planned. So,
well, the book is called The Nearby Resident.
Yep.
Could you give us a brief synopsis without giving away the mystery?
So it takes place in a fictitious town of Carlisle, Minnesota. I don't actually know if that's a town that exists in Minnesota, but I'm like, Carlisle, that seems like a place that stuff could happen, and so I created the town. I chose Minnesota because I've always been a fan of some of the kind of best like stories that I've ever read take place in Minnesota, like in the woods or something. So, and I'm a big mystery guy, so I'm like, this kind of fits what I've read before. So it takes place in a small rural town, similar to what I grew up in. I would say less than 1,000 people, so kind of a everybody knows everybody type town. And these 2 main characters are there on the back end of their high school career, and so they're kind of nobodies, I would say. So kind of going back to that whole idea of like, they aren't flashy, popular, whatever you want to call them, people, just every run of the day mill. And they get assigned this project in school where they've got to go out into the community, get to know somebody that they're maybe not familiar with, somebody with in a business setting or whatever, and just talk to them, get to know them, get a background on them, and then they'll go back and write this paper report or whatever. And what happens is the main character, he inadvertently he's walking out his house on the first day of school, and he hears this weird noise, and he realizes it's coming from his next door's neighbor's yard, and he's like, this is kind of weird. And so he goes and investigates, and all of a sudden realizes that his neighbor's having what he thinks is a heart attack or something. And so he calls the paramedics, and through that little scenario sets off this kind of I wouldn't say it's like a different friendship, because he didn't really pay attention to this guy. It's one of those people that, if you live on a block of people, you're like, I know who he is, but I've never really talked to him type thing. And through that, they kind of form this friendship and bond, and this kid starts to learn just this crazy, kind of background story of this guy, and that, he's done some things in his life. He's had, heartbreak and tragedy strike his, and it turns into this huge mystery, because all of a sudden there's a murder that happens in town, and through different pieces of evidence, and he's somewhat connected, but not entirely. It's kind of, it's like I said, there's a lot going on, but basically 2 kids try and solve this mystery.
So is it fun to write about kids? Because I think a kid's perspective is so unique, right? Because things become so much more grand in the eyes of a child, and of course imagination gets away with you.
Yeah, it's I felt it was pretty easy because these are high schoolers, so it's, I guess not being that far removed from being in that type of age group. It wasn't too difficult to relate back to that. You definitely have to, like, even though I'm 25, the experiences that I had as a kid are different than what kids have now, so even just by a few years, things are different. And so I tried to keep more of a vintage feel. There's not a lot of talk of like iPhones or, that.
There's not a chapter called the Snapchat
Yeah,
arrangement.
there's no, it's pretty rudimentary in terms of that day and age when things were still pretty simple. You had to pick up the phone and call someone, so I tried to keep more of a vintage feel to it. Cause I think those are much simpler days.
And it's fun that it's set in Minnesota. One of my favorite authors is Stanley Gordon West. Have you ever read any of his books?
I've heard of him. I haven't.
Oh man, amazing! Like,
yeah,
remember having to read Until They Bring the Streetcars Back?
No,
I think it was required reading in high school.
It was not on. I don't think it was on my curricula.
Oh, yeah. So they brought Stanley Gordon West to South High every single year because he just lived in St. Paul, and he's getting to be an older guy. But all the English teachers are excited because they take him out to lunch, and then they get to hang out with this author. But it's this guy who wrote about his experiences like back in the 40s and like the 50s, and he's got Until They Bring the Streetcars Back, which is an excellent book. It's got kind of that mystery feel to it too. Finding Laura Bugs is another one, and I can't remember the last, but I've got a couple of books that he signed when he was in Fargo. And he just it's neat because I think people want to know about life in our part of the country.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? There's a reason why we watch The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, because we want to know what it's like to be super rich in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
But people also want to know, like, okay, well, what's life like in the quote unquote heartland?
Right. Yeah, and that really wasn't in terms of setting. I always wanted to be a rural community because I think like you said, it's people don't really know a whole lot of like what goes on, unless you grew up in the area or you're from that particular region. I go to other places and people are like, so what do you guys do? Like, what's it like up there? I'm like, well, it's pretty just day to day, simple.
Well, and it's so like at the time of this recording, it's opening deer hunting season. And I was chatting with a friend of mine from Chicago, and he's like, what are you doing this week? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, and I'm emceeing a deer widow event. And they go, a what? I was like, a deer widow event. And he's like, I have no idea what that means. I'm like, oh, during hunting season, like all these guys, and now a lot of women too, there's a lot of female hunters, but towns can kind of clear out.
Oh, yeah.
And only the people who don't hunt are left. And so they have these big parties to say like, hey, we're going to have a good time too. And it doesn't involve me gutting a deer.
I was on that side of it. I had on average throughout school, I had 17 people in my class. Graduated with 19, but fluctuated from year to year. And when deer season came around, I think me and one other student were the only students in our class.
Yeah.
And then collectively, maybe in the high school, maybe 15 kids, 20 kids total.
I bet you had some teachers who were gone too.
Oh yeah, teachers are gone.
I would have think that'd be awesome.
It was awesome.
I bet all the kids that were picking on me when I was in elementary school would have gone deer hunting.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I don't. My dad, he hunted like way back when, but when I was growing up, it wasn't something I like maybe gravitated towards. So I just didn't deer hunt, and 90% of my friends were gone, and the school was a ghost town, and it was awesome because we, for one, didn't do anything. You just kind of hung out, went to your classes, and pretty much you just sat there and you could bring like your laptop or something, watch a movie, and so the students that were gone would come back that next week and be like, "Oh, it must have really sucked that you had to be here." I'm like, actually, wasn't that bad. Like, just hung out, But now I don't think. Do they have school on opener? I feel like they've changed that now.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't.
No, I mean, yesterday was. I don't think a lot of kids go to school on Monday because it's Veterans Day.
Yeah, I think
And so
they
that's-
changed it.
Yeah, to move around
because
that.
the teachers that were having to stay and do that maybe they weren't hunters, but they were like, so I had I'm here, but I've only got maybe 10 students all day
Right.
through 5 different classes. Like, is it really worth making everybody come in? I think they changed it now. I feel like you don't
That's
have.
smart. I mean, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially up here, it is a holiday. It's a full blown holiday, and
Well, and our economy is so based around it in some places too. Like,
yeah.
Like, what's the name of the town you're from?
Mohall, which
Mohall.
it's north of Minot, about 35 miles, and roughly about 16 miles from the Canadian border.
Oh,
So we're up there.
That's all the Canadian I think I could throw out
That
there.
was a half-hearted Canadian A there.
I was gonna say g'day, but that's Australian. Okay, so especially in a community like that, I bet you that there are people who travel from all over the country into a place like Mohall who
Yeah.
are renting somebody's cabin or somewhere, or
Yep.
it's probably not unheard of to see license plates from New York and California, and
Yeah, I think you get a lot of people from out of state for sure. I think you even get people that are just from different parts of the state because they're like, "Well, I've never hunted up here. I want to check it out." And really, to me, it's like, well, I can't imagine there's too much difference between where I'm from and if you go maybe south of Bismarck or something. But there, to the everyday hunter, I'm sure there's a reason to come up and check it out, I guess.
I knew a girl who was dating a guy who owned a huge ranch kind of up near that area. And what he wanted to do was get a license to breed certain animals so that he could open up a hunt for those animals in that area. So he wanted to be able to
Wow.
breed some bighorn sheep, and then you could apply for a bighorn sheep license, and that there are some in on his property somewhere. And I mean, it was a huge ranch. And so I'm sure there were some fences on the outside of it, but it's not like what I consider some of those things that are really just sleazy the way that they do. It's a 1 city block and there's 5 deer in here. You're going to get it. Enjoy.
Yeah.
But that was his dream, was to open up and just get odd animals that people normally couldn't hunt.
Sure.
And you'd have a better chance than
This guy was ahead of his time.
really ahead of his time. And I think it worked out pretty well for him
Yeah.
too. The only downside is okay, so you're going to breed these animals. You're going to have to go somewhere and find a male and a female,
Yeah.
bring them back to your
There's
ranch.
a lot of moving parts to that.
A lot of animal husbandry has to go into all that.
Yep. You got to be good at it.
Yeah.
What's I'm always interested in hearing about people's reading habits. What are your reading habits? What are you reading right now?
Ooh. I am reading. Well, I'm reading a lot of textbooks because I'm in graduate school, so there's a lot of that going on. But as far as leisure reading, gosh, it sounds bad because I'm doing this, but I haven't read anything recently. I did. I think it was the Shoe Dog. I think it was the guy that started Nike.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the name of the book?
I think you're right.
Shoe Dog
Yeah.
or something. Read that, and that was fascinating to me. The story, the guy that created Nike basically out of the trunk of his car, because in the story he was a track star at Oregon, and he wanted to figure out a way to develop shoes that were more comfortable to the athlete for running long distances and whatnot.
These flip-flops are horrible.
Yeah, and basically he convinced his dad to write him a check, which then was an investment to this company overseas that manufactured these shoes. They sent him a shipment in just a box and was like, if you can sell these and get people to believe in them, we'll continue to send you shipments, and kind of from the ground up. That's how Nike's kind of started, which I love those stories. Like the whole start, Apple starting in a garage. That gives people belief.
You should. There's a beer company called Dogfish Head, which is
Head.
It's out of Milton, Delaware. But the guy who started Dogfish Head has an amazing story of his parents put him through college, and he, like, his senior year started brewing beer in his apartment just for fun. And so he graduates with his English degree. And they're like, "What are you going to do? Are you going to teach?" And he's like, "I'm going to be honest. I kind of like this brewing beer thing. It seems to be a lot of fun." And it went from him just making beer for fun into what is one of the most well-respected breweries in America, especially when it comes to craft brewery. And then he was so innovative. He figured out a way to do this like constant hopping method, like using one of those those vibrating football machines and putting a 5-gallon bucket on top of it, putting it at a slight angle, and then putting holes in the bucket so that the hops would shake around and like one would come out like every like 20 seconds into the boiling vat.
Because why wouldn't you just have it at an angle? You know, like isn't that every day? Not common knowledge.
Yeah, you're sitting there looking at it and be like, "Huh? What? Wait, hold on."
No, that's the stuff I like to hear, because it's just like people that they have like this. I wouldn't say the people that I've talked to that have turned something into nothing, or that was nothing into something, I should say. They're kind of happened by accident. Like you maybe had this like one goal or whatever aspiration, and all of a sudden it turned into this, and I'm like, that's to me is fascinating, because it's like, what are the chances, really?
Do you find yourself reading more like nonfiction than fiction?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm a big kind of history buff guy, so I'm always reading anything kind of like any on the like battles that took place, or like if I go into Barnes and Noble, that's the first section I go to, is like the history and war. And
what eras, any particular era that you would say you find yourself more fascinated with than others?
Not really eras, but like events. So like I got really into I shouldn't say into, because that makes it sound kind of weird, but like in the JFK assassin, like that to me was like fascinating. I've watched like every documentary on TV about it, and I've read a
Stephen King book about it.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Yeah, it was. And so books and just anything that for a while there I was like just I couldn't get enough of it, and so stuff like that I really got into.
Any chance we're going to see the main characters from your book travel back in time and solve the JFK assassination?
They should. That should be that would be a good one. No, unfortunately, there's no time travel in what I have planned, I guess.
Spoiler alert, man. Come on. I haven't read the book yet.
So your website, is it Blaine's Library?
Blaine's Bookshelf.
Blaine's Bookshelf.
I created that to kind of separate my personal life and my writing life, because in social media nowadays I feel like things can get oversaturated, and when you're doing the writing thing, there's a certain audience that you're trying to attract or talk to, but like my mom's third cousin, she might be interested in it, but more so just like what's going on in my life, that type of thing. So I created Blaine's Bookshelf to kind of give myself a separate identity from everything else. And if you go on there, I talk a little bit about what I have now, the Nearby Resident, and then I've got some other projects that I'm working on that are up that you can kind of read a little background on, and then like a mission statement and stuff like that. So, because the whole idea behind the writing too is I always try and give back in some sort of way. So a percentage of the proceeds that I gained from the Nearby Resident went to the American Cancer Society. So I try and do things that are near and dear to my heart, but I think to other people. So like, my grandma battled breast cancer for several years. And so after she passed, I always felt like there was an obligation to ensure that this was still being paid attention to. And, obviously, the American Cancer Society is a great organization for that stuff. So everything that I do, I try and give back in some way, so that I feel like I'm not just selfishly doing it for my own vanity, So
Good for you.
Yeah,
I'm doing this podcast solely for my vanity. Like, that's why it's called JJ Meets World.
No, and
JJ and Tucker produce a podcast.
it kind of, and it kind of motivates me because in order to do some of that stuff, you've got to keep working at it. So The Nearby Resident has been out for a year and a half now, going on 2 years, might be 2 years now. And there is a part 2. I'm not going to give away too many things, but there is a part 2 to this, which will hopefully be out sometime next late spring, early summer. There's a lot going on outside of writing right now, so I've got to find time to be able to manage all of that. And so,
how do you find time right now? Like
I don't have, like, right now, for my work, I spend a lot of time at a computer, and then when I come home, I spend a lot of time at a computer for school. So honestly, I'm kind of maxed out by the end of the day. But that's the nice thing about having kind of this, the writing power, I guess you could say. I self-published, for those who don't know. So I did the editing, the writing. I had a little bit of help with the formatting and like the cover and stuff, because that was a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But most of it, about 98% of it, was all me. And that took a lot of time. And when I started writing, I was in school, but I wasn't working. So between class and just whatever, I had a little bit of time. So I was able to, write throughout the week and get stuff done. Since then, that was 2 years ago now, working full-time student. So there's just, between a Monday to Friday, there's not a lot of daylight, not enough daylight, I should say. So, but I haven't put any pressure on myself to be like, oh, you got to get the next one out. It's.
Did you ever have moments where you're like, I need to sit down and write for 3 hours today? I need to sit down and get that done.
So that's one thing that you research about, or like when you look into like, well, how do you write a book? And everybody talks about the word count, like your daily word count. And I think at first I was kind of enamored by that, like, okay, if I write this many words, whatever, I should have this much by this time. You didn't try and set too many hard deadlines, because then you're really putting yourself under the gun. But I quickly found out that that's not the best way that I write, by knowing that I have to reach a certain point or a certain word count. So I just wrote, and then when the ideas kind of just fizzled out, I just stopped. And most times I would pick up the next day and start, with a new, fresh thought process. But really, it was just, it was really day to day. So some days, I cranked out, maybe 25 to 30 pages. Mm-hmm. And then other days I got barely through 2, because you're just like, you start staring at your computer screen and you're like, I don't have anything. I don't have anything good. And I would say, to end this book, I was at a crossroads, because I knew how I wanted the characters to kind of walk off into the sunset, but I didn't know how to get them to that point. And for about a week and a half, I struggled. I couldn't, I'd look at what I had. I'd ask Lake and my wife, I'd be like, well, what do you think they should do? She'd be like, I don't know. Like, what do you have? What do you envision? And I feel like there has to be some science behind this, because I feel like idea came to me in the shower.
Oh, yeah. Right? That's where my best ideas come.
Right? I don't think that's a fluke. I feel like the best ideas come in the shower.
I have a theory about that, actually. And here's what it is. There are 0 distractions in the shower.
Yeah.
You can only be concentrating on yourself in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. So even if the phone goes off, I'm not going to hop out of the shower and answer that phone. I got shampoo in my hair. And so your brain has this moment where it goes, I know that I can completely take over right now. We're good to go. So unless you're avid about like checking yourself for moles or something like that, I think the shower is the one place, because even the toilet is no longer a spot where you are, people bring their phone into the John all the time.
Yeah.
But the shower, until we figure out the waterproof phone, which I hope we never do, the shower is your spot where it's
yeah,
It's peace. It's ultimate peace.
I firmly believe that some of the best ideas that man has ever thought of have come from bathing, or they were showering or something. Because like it hit me, like I was just like sitting there, and all of a sudden, like, that's it. And instead of going to actually finish the book, because I thought it, maybe 15 pages left that I needed to, write. I didn't write for 2 weeks. I knew how I wanted it to end, and it was so gratifying that I had, it's like when you reach the top of the mountain, you're like, yes. And I didn't write for 2 weeks, and then, opened up my document or whatever and finished it in probably about an hour. So
nice.
People are like, why did you wait 2 weeks? Because I'm like, I was so happy to get to that point that I'm like, there's no need to rush it now. Like I've got it, I'll sit on it, make little tweaks here and there. And then when I go in and finally finish it, it'll be good. But then that was the beginning to the end of my sanity. Cause then the editing came up after that. That
Gotcha.
was, yeah. So then, that's
if people
like,
read through and said like, hey, I found a couple spelling errors.
yeah, they're,
What a bunch of jerks.
yeah, I know. I don't think since the final draft I've heard anything, to my knowledge, because that's the hard part with self-publishing. I don't have the luxury of having somebody, I don't get to throw a manuscript at someone and be like, here, figure out,
There's no team
correct
for
my
you.
mistakes. Yeah, no. So, and that's the thing too, when you read your own stuff for so long, you skip over things. You're the way that you maybe pause in a sentence is not the same way someone else does it. And so that was certainly, the editing was, I tell anybody that wants to write or do their own form of creative writing is prepare yourself for the editing part and maybe assemble a small group of people to help you. Now that I know what it takes, I would definitely, I think in my next projects, I'll have a small group of people that will just, all they have to do is just look for stuff, and I'll go back and make the changes myself. But you start to do that type of stuff, that type of work, and you have to do it for months. It took me to write from just the first draft took me 7 months, 8 months, which I think was fast, just to get a draft out. But then the editing took me almost a year.
Ooh.
Yeah, because there's so much that you have to pay attention. And so with the self-publishing, I went through Amazon. So Amazon is, if they haven't already taken over the world, they're soon,
on their way.
Yeah, they're very on their way.
Pretty close.
And
this Amazon coffee I'm drinking on this Amazon podcast is delicious with my Amazon friend JJ.
Every piece of our equipment for this podcast came from Amazon.
You did.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Including the table.
So yeah, there you go. So Amazon has a great self-publishing kind of entity that they for creative writers and content people. So from a like financial standpoint, it was a no-brainer because there's really no cost to use them.
Oh, so you didn't have to order like 500 books.
No. So the nice thing was that, or the thing that really drew me to Amazon was they do direct to print. So, if you were to buy a copy online, they print it in their warehouse or wherever, and then they ship it directly to you. So as an author, you don't have to have, like you said, a trunk full of books that you're trying to sell off the street.
Well, it used to be in and maybe this still is for the retailers, I don't know, but at like Barnes and Noble, if like the latest Harry Potter came out, a bad example, latest whatever came out that was only going to sell like a third of the stock of books, like they'll send a bunch of books to Barnes and Noble, and then Barnes and Noble is going to send back all the ones that didn't sell.
Yeah.
So the publisher takes a big risk when they print books because they're printing them en masse, and a lot of those just aren't going to get sold for most books. It's rare that something is a Harry Potter and you can reprint it a million times and you're going to be fine.
Have you ever seen what happens to unsold books?
They rip the covers off.
Yeah, and then it's called pulping.
Yeah.
They essentially throw them into a giant vat and just
Quite
mush them
graphic.
down. Yeah, it really is. And then, watching these people who've poured, chunks of their lives into these books and watching it get pulped and being like, well, we'll turn it into other pages of something else. Hopefully that book will sell.
Yeah, no, and I was able to get copies of, if I wanted to have copies on hand that I've kind of distributed as personal tokens, I guess. But for the most part, the people that I know that have gotten it online, which it was really cool because I asked them like, what was the process like? Is it like buying anything, 2 days? I know this has Prime, so if you decide to order it, and there's a Kindle version too, so you could get it within seconds.
Is it part of Kindle Unlimited, or do you charge people for it?
It's part of Kindle Unlimited, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how do you make money off of this thing? So does Amazon write you a check once a month, or
so it
do they give it to you in credit, knowing that you're going to use it right back on their website?
Yeah, no, they should almost. That'd probably no. So it's really simple. The author gets just a percentage, a royalty percentage, and then the rest goes to Amazon. But it's pretty favorable in the offers,
right? Especially because you don't have to put any cash down for it on that.
So it was kind of a no-brainer for me because I had looked at other like companies that do self-publishing and not that I needed the biggest cut, but I wanted to feel like if I was doing it, I wasn't gonna get axed, from a especially when you're doing it on your own and you feel like I want this to be like okay, like it was worth my time, and so. Yeah, I looked at other places, but Amazon was kind of a no-brainer. And because everybody uses Amazon for the most part. You'll have a few individuals out there that are like, nope, don't use Amazon. I'm like, wow, good for you. Like it's almost impressive when you find that. But for the most part,
I shop only at local stores. That's why none of my clothes fit just right.
Yeah. No, I was like, I feel like most people use Amazon, so it was from a distribution perspective, it was kind of a no-brainer from that. But
at some point, you're going to be able to be like, Alexa, transcribe, and then you're just going to start talking, and that's going to be how people write books.
Do they give you an option where if you wanted to buy 100 copies, you could get them at a discounted price?
Yeah. And so I did a book signing in my hometown, and that's how I was able to get.
Hopefully not during deer hunting week.
No.
Okay, good move.
It was actually like the week before school let out, so I'm sure everybody was anxious to get to the lake.
Did you come talk to like the English class and be like, "Hello, everyone, I'm Blaine Cook, and I went to this school as well."
Yeah, I spoke to a group of elementary students, and that's the thing too.
Is that your target audience for the nearby resident?
Yeah, definitely young children.
There's no pictures or nothing in the book.
Yeah, what the heck? I had some great questions from that. That was comical to some degree.
Really?
Yeah, one of a girl asked me. Well, first she just asked me, she's like, "Are you famous?" And I was like, "Well, it depends on who you ask." But so like questions like they're young kids, so their minds are in different areas. But yeah, she just was like straight up, like she didn't even hesitate. Like there was no expression on her face. She's like, "Are you famous?" And I was just like so taken back. I was like, well, I like stumbled with the question, but I had one kid.
By the way, the answer is always yes. If someone asks you if you're famous, you always say yes because then lunch is free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've learned that over the years.
I don't remember what I even said. I probably was like, maybe
when
one
an
day,
ancient
like,
being asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
I know. I should. Now that I know.
Mm-hmm.
Another question I had was if it was going to be a movie, which I thought was. I was like, that would be really cool. Like if I could definitely see this be a movie.
I was going to ask, is there a part so you own this solely, right? Amazon doesn't get any
they get
ownership?
The rights to the distribution because
Okay.
they're the one that make it something.
So if this if this was optioned for a movie or really if it started to take off like a 50 Shades of Grey or something like that, Amazon would just get the distribution rights from that.
From what I understand, yes. If I ever got into a room where that was like a conversation where this could actually happen,
One of those good problems.
I will have a lawyer.
Be like, I'm
Very
the famous
close.
little girl.
Yeah. I'll have people that I'll turn to and be like, like, is it? Yeah. So from that standpoint, yeah, I own the rights to the manuscript and the content in it. But Amazon is the umbrella that, says like, this is where it comes from.
Have you sent a copy of this to the CEO of Netflix yet?
No.
You should.
But shout out, I did send one to Steve Shield.
Yeah?
Sent one to him because I used to work at Shields.
As an employee-owned business.
In their men's department. What up, men's department over at Shields?
Were you ever in meetings with Steve Shield?
No.
I'd always heard as sort of like a local legend, and it must be true.
Yeah, I believe it is. I know exactly
at
what
the
you're
1 hour mark, he gets up and leaves. And it's like,
I wouldn't doubt it.
You've got an hour of my time, I told you, and it doesn't matter what's being spoken about. If it's an hour, he's out.
I believe it. I feel like
I want to get to that point in my life.
From personal, because I was never in a meeting with him, but I could see it.
I want to get to that point in my life.
Where you're just like,
where it's like, listen, you've got, but it wouldn't be an hour. It'd be like, you got me for 5 minutes.
See, I would say I would try and do that, but then I'd be like, I'm too much of a pushover. So
Right.
I'd look at my watch and be like, this is where I'm supposed to storm out and
unless
create a big
it's too
scene,
interesting. If it's like, oh, this is way too interesting and it's gone past an hour, now I have to leave to keep up the mystique of me, Blaine Cook, leaving every 30 minutes because I got something else going on.
Cue music.
Also, maybe he's just got IBS. And he's like, this is the maximum amount of time I can safely be away from a restroom.
That's true.
True.
So are there sort of, do you have like a Mount Rushmore of authors of your personal taste? The authors that you return to or maybe have made an impression on your life as you've been reading?
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
Fine, all my questions have been garbage.
Well, we can't all ask if he's famous, JJ.
Yeah. Gosh,
even if it's just one or two.
I would say, it seems kind of cliche, but Harry Potter.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have
you ever heard her personal story too? Like, talk about an underdog story.
That's true. That's just like the Apple story you were saying.
That's why I would say a small percentage of me why I wanted to do the writing, because of her story, which was incredible. I mean, practically on the brink of just total, she was...
They were homeless.
Yeah, living off of food stamps, I think, at some point, and
she sat in that little cafe and just wrote and wrote and wrote. Yeah. And she got rejected a ton of times by people with Harry Potter.
That was the thing, too, that kind of inspired me, was knowing that, like, you're not going to be able to appeal to everyone's, what they're looking for in a novel, but you're going to find that the right group of people will eventually, kind of lock on and gravitate. And her story I was super fascinated about, because, like the idea of Harry Potter, well, she was on a train, wasn't she? Commuting or something, and like just came to her and she wrote it down on a napkin, boy wizard, something Harry Potter, it was
parents dead, Harry Potter done.
Yeah.
Voldemort.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Owl.
Yeah. So
question mark? It was probably owl question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owl question. Yeah.
Be like, Joanne, can we really are the owls important? And she's like, they are.
Yeah.
I was writing this on a napkin and an owl tried to steal the napkin. It was a sign.
So I've always wanted to get someone on here at some point who is a professional like editor. Mm-hmm. Like that's what they do. Yep. Authors give them their stuff, they edit it. I'm so fascinated by what is involved with that, because I have to assume some editors are going to be like, I want you to rewrite this entire thing, and here's how you're going to word it.
Yeah.
Right. And others are just going, this doesn't make sense. Can you clarify this? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I know you did your own editing, but, in that process, what kind of approach do you take with yourself? I mean, are you basically writing something, taking some time, looking at it, and giving yourself notes as though you're looking at it with fresh eyes?
The best criticism that I probably have received as a writer came from my high school professor, Mrs. Peterson was her name.
Shout out to Miss P.
She told me, she said, your you're good. You're good at this. You know, you can understand how a story develops and what, you know. But she said your one issue that you maybe have is that you write the way that you talk. So there's a big difference between, you know, just writing and then writing the way, like, you know, if people were to read something from, you know, if JJ wrote something, you could hear JJ's voice come through. But that not all the time is the best way to get a story, you know, because you've got to be more kind of structured, you know, so you're not deviating too far away from, because you could say something makes total sense. I could say it out loud, makes total sense, but on paper, it may not come off in the same way. So that was from an editing standpoint, I had to really go back and, you know, just move one word, you know, maybe that was a little bit further down in the sentence and just move it up. And it made a total difference in the way that I was trying to, you know, relay that message. And that was definitely something I had to pay attention to, because I definitely, when she said that, I was like, yeah, you're definitely right. I do write the way that I talk, you know, and whatnot. And so,
was it difficult to balance dialogue versus description? Because sometimes when I'm trying to write like a scene between two people, it's all like dialogue, and I'm like trying to convey everything through dialogue. And I'm like, that's not interesting. This isn't a movie script. This is, you know, a story.
This has a fair amount of dialogue in it because it's the two characters are best friends, and the one friend of the main character, he's kind of a like a wild card, you know. He's got kind of a weird, not a weird sense of humor, but he's got a different sense of humor. He's kind of that friend that you're constantly having to bail out of situations because he either runs his mouth too far, you know, like things like that. So there's a lot of that dialogue going on, and like you said, you know, you have to be careful between just going too much on that and not enough on the description. So that was another thing I had to pay attention to, because I wanted there to be dialogue. It couldn't just be a story of, you know, he then went this way, and then
there was a long hallway, and at the end of the hallway was an urn.
Yeah.
Were there ashes in the urn? He had to know.
Yeah. So it's this constant balance. And then, you know, back to your question, so as a self-publisher, that was one thing between self-publishing and trying to find somebody to do it for you, was as soon as you sign away your right on that manuscript, that publisher has the authority to basically tell you to do anything. You know, if you want it to get out to market and they say, well, I don't like this, you got to axe this whole thing, or you've got to change the title, you've got to do this. I just didn't really feel like that was for me right now. I would never like turn away a big time publisher that was like, hey, you know, we'll do this and we'll get it out to, you know, bookstores all over the country. Yeah, that'd be a great, amazing opportunity. I would never shy away from that. But right now, I felt like I want it to be uniquely mine, you know, and like this is what I created. And you hope that like if a publisher did come down the road, that you built yourself enough notoriety that they would say, we feel like we're pretty comfortable in what you know, do. So we're going to let you still have that creative.
It's hard to imagine someone pulling rank on like Stephen King.
Yeah.
Who's
right?
like, listen, I'll have another book in about a month, so get ready for it. And I'm not going to give you time to edit it.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to put it out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I feel like once you've kind of, you've made your stay within the writing community, I'm sure publishers are more apt to be like, you know what? You've sold a lot of books. You know, Stephen, you probably know what you're doing. So if you want to, you know, title it this, then...
Well, and even some of the books that have been changed just because what's hot right now, right?
Right.
So they don't think about what's good for the longevity of this book. It's, oh, you know what? Nannies are really hot right now. So you need to include a character in this book.
It's like that movie studio mentality.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of cases. But again, like you said, they're taking a huge risk on publishing some of these books. And so like if your initial publication is 10,000 copies.
Yeah, I totally get it from their perspective, because it's their name, it's their reputation. So if they don't feel like it's gonna, you know, get enough people's interest, then it's a huge risk.
I think you can also make the argument though that if you are risk averse, get out of like the movie publishing, the book publishing business. Like, what are you doing there?
Right.
I mean, regardless. Yes, when you gamble, you'd like to mitigate your risk on some level, but at some point you have to go, listen, if I was afraid of risk, I could have just, gone and done, I could have worked at a bank, or something like that.
You mean banks are super risky?
Okay. Like you work at a farmer's market co-op.
Yeah,
oh my God. Are you not seeing what's happening with the harvest this year?
Could be an elementary school teacher.
Perfect.
No. I've chosen to be poor.
Yeah, there you go.
So Blaine, as we're wrapping this thing up. So while you were describing the editing process, I thought of this analogy, which is in my personal life, I make really good spaghetti. Okay, like really
Love
good
spaghetti.
But it's involved. It takes like a couple hours to get this really good spaghetti. And by the time I'm done making it, the last thing I want is spaghetti. So I will make the spaghetti and then have like a ham sandwich for dinner.
Yeah.
It must be really hard to keep going back to this. And were there times where you're like, nope, I did what I'm going to do here and I don't think I'm going to finish this. I'm not meant for it.
I would say that, a little bit of doubt creeps into your mind because you just don't know what it's going to bring. Like you could have all these different, fantasies, if you will, like, whatever. And it'd just be a total dud, and then you're kind of like, wow, I really thought I had something here. But I think if you approach it that way, you're kind of already setting yourself up for failure. Mm-hmm. So I felt like if there was a story to tell, I'd tell it, and that if people wanted to listen to it, they would, and I'm definitely one of those people too that I like to do a little bit of everything. So I felt like if this didn't pan out, in terms of, getting your name out there in being an author, then I'm kind of like well, what's the next thing, and so, but fortunately enough, I've had a great response from it. So, there's just so much unknown. So I feel like you can't really go into it thinking, well, what if it doesn't work? It's like you just do it, see what happens, and the sun will come up the next day, I guess. So
very cool. And so we can look forward to the sequel to The Nearby Resident.
Yeah. So
sometime in mid 2020.
Mid 2020.
Does the resident get closer? Is the resident closer?
I was thinking
Nearby?
it's further away. It was like the further resident.
Maybe.
There's definitely, not to give anything away, but there's certainly some pretty big stuff that's coming in the second.
Is it still in Carlisle?
Still in Carlisle.
Oh, that town's just screwed. All this action taking place in one small town.
I got to say, the second part will be what people want. If you read the first part, you're kind of left in this like, well, okay, I need that. What else? Well, what's coming next? So that's where part 2. I think it'll give the readers, okay, I see where he's going, and then there will be a part 3 to this.
Whoa!
So there
is that an exclusive on JJ Meets World?
Yeah, I've told people that, but yes, to a larger audience, yes, there will be a part 3 to this at some point.
That's when you go back and you tell that little girl who's now in middle school, I am famous.
Yeah, I am famous. Yeah. And then I have a kind of a comical book coming out. It's called Don't Go to the DMV on a Friday, which is kind of it's just a compilation of stories that of experiences that I've had, just whether it be at the DMV, hanging out with friends, just different things that I, kind of looking back were comical life lessons, I guess. So that'll be out tentatively next year. I don't know exactly when. And then I have a children's series, kind of a younger, I would say ages 3 to 6, book series coming out. It's The Adventures of Henley the Golden, which is actually my dog's name is Henley, so that's where I get the title from.
Oh, Henley! Shout out to Henley.
Yeah, yep. Named after Carson Wentz's dog, Henley.
Oh.
That's how so we're not very original, but shout out to Carson on that.
I wanted to name my turtle after Carson Wentz's turtle, but he doesn't have one.
He should have a turtle. So I have that'll be out sometime next year too. Which the children's series, because I had a lot of parents approached me after the book came out, like, hey, I read, just curious, are you ever going to do any younger, like, aged writing? And I thought about it. It's hard to know whether that would be something you'd want to get into, because getting into like youth listen to everything. They're sponges.
Young adult fiction is a massive genre.
Yeah,
massive genre.
So
and a ton of adults read young adult fiction.
Yep, like me.
Yeah. So I kind of like looked at him like, I'll think about it, and then I was, once again, I think I was taking Henley for a walk one day, and I'm like, this, like, people love dogs, or unless you're a cat person, whatever.
You can be both.
You can be both. And but I was like, this would be a great educational hook if there was a dog that could talk, and like she has her dog friends, but they are like in these different situations. So like one of the titles will be like, I don't know the exact title, but like the whole premise of it is like not to litter,
Mm-hmm.
So like Henley and her friends will be at the dog park, and then they'll see
one of the dogs eats a cigarette butt.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah. So exactly. So then it's this whole,
You haven't had your shots.
this whole educational hook of like, don't litter. And then there'll be another one that's like, there's that new dog at the park, but nobody's playing with them.
Oh.
So how can we include everybody? So it'll have these like little educational hooks, and I think that'll appeal to, like I said,
Sounds like a PBS series to me.
Age, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, It could be.
Yeah. Gotta think
So,
about tomorrow.
a lot of stuff.
I'd
lot
love
of
to do
stuff on
some
the radar.
voice work in Henley. I think I could do I could be a bloodhound.
What if there's an anthropomorphic like fire hydrant that's like, oh,
yeah.
shucks, Henley's coming again.
I'm gonna get pissed all over.
Yeah.
It'd be like a lot of like liquid in that voice, right? So just keep me in mind, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Or if you want to put me in as a character, I mean, that's fine as well too.
Shout out.
Do you like in the Henley books? Like, are you a character in there yourself?
Nope. It'll
Just the dogs?
It'll just be more of the perspectives of the animals and the dogs. You got to keep it pretty rudimentary with the younger group, because really, if a kid opens up a book, they're just looking at like the pictures and like oh, look at the dog. But if the parent it can read it to them, like then there's that involvement for the parent side of it. But then the kid gets the idea of the animals and whatnot. So
a book series I'm really loving right now is that guy who takes famous movies that are not intended for children and turns them into like nighttime books. Like there's the Die Hard one that tells the story of Die Hard, but it's a children's like nighttime book. It's amazing. They do it one Back to the Future.
There's an idea.
Yeah,
that's a
right?
good idea. Shoot.
You got $1 million. Well, listen, we don't want to keep you from writing because obviously you got a lot of projects that
a lot of stuff going on for 2020, but it should be fun.
It's been a real pleasure, Blaine. And then blainesbookshelf.com is how people can find some works. And you're also on amazon.com.
Yes. Yep. Primarily the book is on Amazon. If you go to like Barnes & Noble online, you can order it through them.
The Nearby Resident.
Yep. And then Blaine's Bookshelf. So yeah, that's kind of where, if you want to keep up with just different things happening as far as the writing goes, that's where I'd point you.
Well, it was a real pleasure to have you on the show
Thanks
today.
for having me on, guys. It's been awesome.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews. and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. So I was reading Blaine's book. I'm pretty sure the character of Cynthia Ray Johnson is based off of me.